Hey guys, what's up? It is week 392. I have a bunch of reviews for you, so let's just hop right into this. First up is going to be A Simple Plan from Arrow Video. This is the 4K, of course, and this is directed by Sam Raimi in 1998. This stars some heavy names in here: Billy Bob Thornton, Bill Paxton, Bridget Fonda, Gary Cole is also in here. But the three big people, of course, that everyone would know are going to be, Bill Paxton, Bridget Fonda, and Billy Bob Thornton. So, this is based off a book. That's probably why the damn story's so fantastic. Plus, the direction of Sam Raimi is great. Sam Raimi, of course, started his career in horror. He was never the biggest horror, fanatic. If you look at his influence, there's Three Stooges and stuff in there. And I remember interviews with him early on mentioning that a lot of his big inspirations were like Hitchcock and stuff, a lot of the big name directors. So Raimi did do one of the most iconic horror films of all time in Evil Dead. He made two sequels to that, Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn, and of course Army of Darkness. He would make some other kind of wacky, weird kind of cult favorites in Crime Wave, Dark Man. He made a Wild Western, Quick and the Dead before this. He also made a baseball film, and he went on to direct Marvel Spider-Man movies for Sony back in the day, the first three Spider-Mans and Spider-Mans. And he also did stuff like, Drag Me to Hell, later on returning to his horror roots, and bigger films like the Oz film and the Doctor Strange film. So Raimi went from his horror films all the way up, and this is one of these movies that is just such a perfect little movie in between like his Marvel stuff and his horror stuff. Just a great, amazing crime thriller. So this basically follows, I cannot think of what state this is. It's driving me crazy. It felt like it was filmed in Wisconsin. Like a Wisconsin kind of deal like that, but it feels like it might be filmed in Canada or something like that. So it's a Minnesota town, which is perfect. I was thinking Wisconsin, Minnesota, yeah. So I absolutely adore Billy Bob Thornton and Bill Paxton. They're two of my favorite actors, I think, once I think back and think about it and everything like that. So, essentially, Bill Paxton works at a mill. He works a very blue-collar life. His wife, Bridget Fonda, is pregnant. They have a kid on the way. His brother is Billy Bob Thornton. He's kind of I want to say this, just a loser. Never grew up, never really did much with his life, never really had a wife or anything like that. And his best friend is this kind of town drunk who's an asshole, and he's loud, and he's just kind of a douchebag, obnoxious kind of guy. He's married and he's unemployed. So, those two guys are kind of like always hanging around together, and Bill Paxton is kind of like on the straight and narrow. It's a small town, everybody knows everybody. It's the dead of winter. So one day while they're going to visit their father's and mother's grave and whatnot, put some roses on there, on the way back, they go through this wooded area, and a fox starts out in front of them, and they swerve and they crash. Billy Bob Thornton's dog takes off in the woods after the fox, and they go after him, and they find this plane that had went down that looks pretty abandoned. No one seems to have touched it at all. They go in there's a dead guy inside, and there is $4.4 million. And it's a simple plan, right? They decide to take the money and kind of hide it until spring, but nothing's ever going to be that simple. And you can actually feel the nerves immediately of Bill Paxton, because he's this guy who, and there's a weird kind of self-righteousness to him. Maybe he thinks he's better than everybody in this small town, as the, Billy Bob's drunk friend would say. So it's just this weird dichotomy between these three characters. And of course, Bridget Fonda gets involved too, being his wife and all that kind of stuff. But it's just a lot of it, at first you think, oh, Billy Bob's going to fuck this up. He's such an idiot. He's such a half-wit. And as the movie progresses, you learn that Billy Bob knows a lot more than he's not necessarily like he's hiding it, but he's more clever, more nuanced, more sensitive, and just overall well-rounded human being, more than you think he would. And his performance is probably one of my favorites, most sad performances I've seen ever. And he's so good in this. Bill Paxton's also really good. This is very similar to Shallow Grave, which came out in 1994. I think it's a Danny Boyle film. Pretty good movie, thriller, kind of hiding the money, and so of course somebody's going to come for him. I actually prefer this one. I think that just being older and kind of living the life of Bill Paxton somewhat, which is working where you work and realize you're just going to be stuck working there forever with the money, and it's never going to get a lot. It's just always going to be that steady pace, that American dream, as they will. So things they start to get out of control almost immediately, and when money's involved, people become different. And that's what it's showcasing here. Nothing's ever simple. And it's got a Coen Brothers flair too, and that makes sense because Raimi and them go back in a little bit of history of their movies and stuff, and you think like the whole speech in was it Raising Arizona and Intruder is both from the same speech, I think. But this is a brilliant film. Expertly well acted. Cinematography's great. There's little hints at foreshadowing, which are lovely. The characters have like these phrases that they always say, which brings a realistic nature to it. I love when Billy Bob says he looks at the crows. He's like, "Man, just waiting for something to die. I need it. Weird job. Weird job." And he always says, "It's pretty cool, huh? Pretty cool, huh?" And it reminds me of people I know, people that I'm fond of. And there is a dynamic between the brothers that I can relate to on a level, especially with their history of their parents and all that stuff. And it got me. It got me right in the feels, right in the gut, right in relation, and just that dark side of human nature, that dark side of Americana, that dark side of that smile on your face, small town hospitality. It's a perfect movie. I loved it. Instant classic for me. I do not know why I had not seen this movie. Sam Raimi is one of my favorite directors. I love the Evil Dead movies. Dark Man, Quick and the Dead are favorites. I like Crime Wave. I love those movies. So, I think that maybe I steered away when this came out. Even though it has two of my favorite actors. Bridget Fonda's really great, too. And they do this thing where you think maybe it's going to go this way where everybody just kills each other out of sheer suspecting each other, but it goes in different ways that I didn't expect. It goes to different places, and I thought that was refreshing. As far as the special features are concerned, we have a slew of them. We have a 5.1 mix. Of course, it's in 4K. The 5.1 mix is really good. Then we have subtitles. Brand new audio commentary by critics Glenn Kenny and Farah Smith Neiman. Or is that Neiman? Brand new audio commentary by production designer Patricia Von Brandenstein with filmmaker Justin Beam. Of Ice and Men, a newly filmed interview with cinematographer Alar Kilvido. Standing Her Ground, a newly filmed interview with actor Becky Ann Baker. Dead of Winter, a newly filmed interview with actor Chelsea Ross. On-set interviews with Paxton, Thornton, Fonda, Raimi, and producer Jim Jacks. Behind-the-scenes footage. Theatrical trailer, reversible sleeve featuring original newly commissioned artwork by Matt Griffin. Was Jim Jacks the guy who used to produce all of... was he the guy who produced all the Kevin Smith stuff? The name is very familiar. But anyways, I love this movie. Fantastic release in 4K. Looks gorgeous. Cinematography's great. Really good winter cinematography. And it chills your blood and stuff like that. And some of the stuff that Bridget Fonda says to Bill Paxton, nobody's going to think that you did it. You have a good reputation. No one thinks that you would be capable of this stuff. But fantastic. There is a body count, so if you're thinking this is going to be like on your edge of your seat, there's that. But there's actually people that die, and it's pretty crazy stuff. So great action film, everything like that, and it keeps you kind of biting your nails. Great stuff. Alright, the next one here is from Arrow Video as well. This is a 4K of The Invasion from 2007, starring Nicole Kidman, Daniel Craig, and Jeffrey Wright. This is kind of before Daniel Craig was Bond or anything like that, so he's not a huge star. Really good performance in here. Nicole Kidman's one of my favorites, and Jeffrey Wright is always fantastic. Got a great presence, always good. So, we know the story, right? It's based off the Jack Finney novel, which it spawned the original 56 version by Don Siegel. Then we have the 78 version by Philip Kaufman. And then we have the 1993 version by Abel Ferrara. So we have all these renditions of the Body Snatchers. We also have Puppet Masters, which is a book that came out around the same time as Body Snatchers. So we have that kind of element that also came out in 94-ish. Then we have tons of ripoffs, Seed People, tons of movies that were inspired by this. So by the time we come to 2007, The Invasion, we always have one of these for each kind of like decade. We have 50s, 70s, 90s, and we have one for the 2007. Yeah, I didn't really know what to expect on this. I'm a big fan of the three previous films, especially the 56 version. So I heard a lot of negative things about this movie. The opening is kind of strange how it opens up. We just have kind of a plane or a space shuttle kind of crash, and there's a lot of debris, and everybody says, don't touch it, it could be contaminated. And that's kind of where we suspect the pod kind of organisms came from. They kind of look like synthetic kind of like skin or cells and whatnot, and they start to get into people, and of course they're not acting typically the same. This adds some different elements that the original films do not have, and I'm going to spoil this, so spoilers here. Overall, before I spoil this, I thought this was a pretty good movie. It's not as good as the previous three, but it's still good. I like that story. I like that paranoia. I like that constant running. I like that fear of losing your identity. It's something I really enjoy. The different things that they add in here, they update things, and they make it like pass through a vaccine. which obviously is going to bring people to think Coven and all that kind of stuff like that almost immediately. Makes it a little bit more, timely, I guess. This is 2007, and we're already thinking about that, and we have that come to fruition with the vaccine and stuff. It wasn't aliens, of course. It wasn't alien pod people within the vaccine. Hopefully, it wasn't. But yeah. So there's that aspect too, and there's other aspects that they kind of add in that maybe they pushed us really hard on this one, but maybe if we were all together and kind of had that unity, we wouldn't be killing each other. But then again, you lose your humanity. Is it worth it? There's this whole argument within the movie. And there's a great speech in there of this Russian kind of diplomat gives at a dinner. Pretty cool stuff. But let's get into the movie. They do change some things and aspects about it, how people are immune in this one. There'll be people that are immune to the thing. We also have Veronica Cartwright is in here from the 78 version. Nice little, I would say, extended cameo. It's a pretty decent performance. Kind of the character who's like screaming at the top of their lungs about something being wrong first. Nicole Kidman's character is a psychiatrist. Is she a psychiatrist or a psychologist? I always confuse them too. I think a psychiatrist. So she basically is learning and talking to people. So she immediately kind of notices something's off. Her ex-husband is one who's early exposed to it, and that's always trying to get the kid for the weekend out of nowhere. And her neighbor, kind of love interest, is Daniel Craig, who's a doctor. Jeffrey Wright works as a doctor as well, maybe like more a scientific doctor. I'm not sure exactly what his job is. So Daniel Craig and Nicole Kidman are two of the people that can realize this right away, and her son is kind of immune to it. So like they kind of get on the thing right away. So a big chunk of the movie is her trying to get her son back. There's these kind of moments where people are forced down and they spit it in their face, kind of like Prince of Darkness. There's a kind of deal where they sneeze, but it's not a sneeze, it's the virus or the cells and whatnot. So like it's similar to it. It gets pretty big, like on the streets and everything like that. But it has kind of a War of the Worlds style ending, if that makes any sense to anybody, how it's all taken care of and everything. I think that is kind of strange. I prefer the dark endings on these movies, especially when you're looking. They progressively seem to get like. The first one is probably like a forced happy ending, and then the 78 one is by far the darkest. But by the time we get to like 93, they kind of leave it semi-dark, semi-open, and then this one is just completely like a nicer ending. And the idea that the persons that were infected with it completely forgot when they go to sleep, it kind of looked at like kind of a sleep organism. But the idea of not being able to fall, like it kind of like everything's a dream to you when you're actually taken over. There's a scene in here which I found quite funny is. We're in spoiler territory here, so all these characters had, kind of cornered her, and she shoots a bunch of them, and then somebody she knows is infected shoots that person in the leg. I'm like, you could have shot the other people in the leg too, right? But you didn't think of that, so now there's a bunch of dead bodies here. But overall, the invasion is pretty good. It's not as good as the other ones, but I think those are all really strong films. This one's solid. As far as the special features are concerned, we have subtitles, of course, 5.1 mix. We have commentary with Andrea Subasi and Alexander West, co-host of the Faculty of Horror podcast. And we have Body Snatchers Beyond, a new visual essay by film scholar Alexandra Heller-Nicholas. The Bug That's Going Around, a new visual essay exploring the invasion as pandemic prophecy by film scholar Josh Nelson. We've Been Snatched Before, an archival featurette from 2007. The Invasion, a new story, an archival featurette from 2007. Invasion on Set, archival featurette, of course. The Invasion Snatched, archival. And then we have Illustrated Collector's Booklet featuring new writings by film critics William Bibiani and Sally Christie. Reversible sleeve and original newly commissioned artwork by Tommy Pocket. Double-sided fold-out poster, also by Tommy Pocket. So if you like this movie or you feel like you would, give it a shot. It's pretty good. Not great, but good. And then we have what? We have the first two on 4K, and we have this one. We still need the 93 one. Maybe it'll happen. Who knows? Okay, the next one is a Fun City release, and this is Heavenly Bodies. Canadian film, of course, directed by Lawrence Dane, famous actor from stuff like Scanners, and of course he is in Rituals, which is one of my favorites. So yeah, Heavenly Bodies, here we go. This is like always look like kind of like your kind of like 80s sex kind of comedy to me, so it's pretty different. It's more of like your 80s kind of drama dance movie. Now, originally, this movie was supposed to be more of a thriller, according to the commentary, but it kind of came in and changed everything. It stars, I can't think of the actress's name. I don't want to leave her out because she's really good. Cynthia Dale, who I knew right away. I recognized her. I was like, man, is that who she's got to be in something. And she's in My Bloody Valentine. She's one of the main girls that actually ends up in the mine towards the end. Good performance in that. Good performance in this. She's very likable. So this isn't just your, cookie cutter sex comedy or anything like that. It's not really that at all. It's definitely a drama with kind of almost a sports movie in a way. So it's definitely the little guys versus the big guys kind of story element too. When you go into the sports movies, that's like the quintessential kind of storyline, right? Even Dodgeball does it. Everything does it. So Cynthia Dale is, a jazzercise kind of exerciser, and she does really good stuff. And like she opens up this class to train people. She buys this, like, rents out this warehouse and starts like a steady thing and builds herself up, and it just becomes one of these people that is like a self-made woman making money, doing a good job. And there is a tryouts for a TV show where she'll have her own hour of dancing and whatnot, or half an hour, whatever you think. And she's trying against this other woman who's is in kind of the same spot. She's a little different, but she has some backing, kind of like a producer or whatnot who's he runs like a big kind of gym and everything like that. So they're kind of the enemy. She goes in and she wins, which automatically creates bad blood between all of them and whatnot. So as she progresses, she meets like kind of a nice guy, and they start dating. She has a kid already, and we have a lot of romance stuff, kind of cutesy and everything like that. But there's going to be some falling out. There's going to be some people backstabbing and whatnot, and people do things you don't expect, and it's all going to come down to this big dance off where it's going to be like you dance for like as long as you possibly can dance, and the last team standing wins. So we have the gym has their 10 representatives, and we have her like kind of class teaching 10 representatives, and they go against each other, and they have this crazy dance off, and it's very motivational kind of deal, right? It's fun. There's some nudity in here which I didn't expect to see, in this weird kind of prank thing. Pranks in the 80s, especially in films, were not like pranks nowadays. People are like, yeah, well, we drugged you and then we tied you up with a horse and took a bunch of pictures. It's a prank. It's like, these are crimes. These are sexually weird crimes. This prank is more just hiring strippers and doing that kind of stuff and cross-dressing. Yeah, not nearly as bad as some of the pranks you see in other movies, which are basically sexual crimes. But as you think, this is a fun movie, a little heartwarming, great soundtrack. You can't give it enough praise for the soundtrack. Good stuff, especially if you like 80s stuff, you like 80s outfits. You'll get a kick out of it. Like seeing Cynthia Dale star in something. That was cool. She does a good job. Fun City did a great job remastering this thing. I love it. They got the old classic Key Video. That's a Key Video logo kind of style, right? Remember those old kind of VHSs that used to have. Do I have any Key Video sitting over here? I don't know if I do. I remember I had a bunch of them growing up and throughout the years, but I don't know if any Key stuff I still have, but I remember that label for a very long time, and always enjoyed the side of the case. As far as special features, we have new interview with Cynthia Dale, newly recorded audio commentary by Millie DeSergio and Jeffrey Mixed. I mispronounced that last name. Is it Surichiko? Hopefully it is, but that is Heavenly Bodies from Fun Cities. Fun stuff. Still good. Good stuff. All right, we're continuing the J-Horror Rising box set, and we're going to hop into the next two here. The first one up is Carved, The Slit-Mouthed Woman by Koji Shirayashi, who did a bunch of films, including Record of Sweet Murder and Nilroy the Curse. So I'd seen this one before. I covered this one on here. It was nice to see an HD kind of master. Is this the newest film on the set from 2007? So The Slit-Mouthed Woman is kind of an urban legend in Japan. Now they call these, what do they call those? Yokais, I believe they call them monsters in Japan, and then they call the ghost something else kind of deal. They might just call them, what is a generic term? It's not Onibaba, that's a movie, but I think it's something like that. But they have these yokais, and I think Slit-Mouthed Woman would be considered kind of a yokai kind of deal. So this movie's, I guess plot structure is a little wild, a little crazy. It turns into a kind of a detective story here. So we have this teacher who has abused her daughter, which is a dark kind of thing to make your main character be like an abusive like parent who's also a teacher. And this young boy disappears in like the playground, and the friends witness this, and they say it was, it's a slit-mouthed woman, this kind of weird urban legend character who wears a mask, but underneath the mask she has kind of a Chelsea smile, or Chelsea grin, I think you'd call it, somewhat like that. And she's abducting these kids, and no one's knowing what's happening to them. A modern day boogeyman. Pretty scary stuff. So the teacher, all the kids are being walked home because of this, and the teacher ends up losing a kid to the slit-mouthed woman. And it appears that maybe possibly like like the kids that are taken or kids that have been abused, and another teacher comes along, or I can't remember if it's a colleague of some sorts, and says, hey, I have a history with this kind of stuff. I believe I know who the Slit-Mouthed woman was, and they start to look into it. His past is revealed, more of her past is revealed, some of the kids who are kidnapped past is revealed, and we realize that Slit-Mouthed woman can become almost like any parent who's possibly done abuse or not wanted children, and it gets really weird and wild, and by the end of it, it just gets even weirder, and we see the backstory unfold. Slit-Mouthed woman is good, it's creepy, it's bizarre, it pushes edges. It's not a traditional, like a bunch of characters in here that are traditional. I mean, like I said, we have abusive parents as the main characters and stuff. Overall, this is a good kind of Japanese, I don't want to call it a ghost story, because it's not really a ghost story. It's kind of a weird, like, it is a ghost story, but it's not a ghost story, kind of jumping body. I guess, or say yokai. Would you consider this a yokai? And yokais, there's a whole box set of yokai that I think was Arrow that put out. Was this really cool box set. It's kind of like giving you a glimpse at what yokai are, and to them, not like it would. A yokai would be like it's a monster made out of a door. That is a yokai, you know. And other characters like are different, that are large. Of course, that is the kaiju and all that kind of stuff like that. But this is an interesting film. I think it's good. I don't think it's Shirayashi's best film, of course. He has a lot of great stuff. He also did that really nasty movie Grotesque, which I haven't seen in years. But so as far as the special features are concerned, we have 5.1 and stereo for the film, and then we also have subtitles, Carved the Slit-Mouthed, brand new audio commentary by Japanese folklore expert Zach Davidson. Then we have a brand new interview with director Koji Shirayashi, and then we have Weapon of Choice, brand new video essay on the film as well by Japanese horse specialist Lindsay Nelson. And yeah, that's all we have on here. It looks pretty good. I mean, these movies were low budget, they were double features, but I like this one. Rewatching it was pretty cool. Okay, so the next one in the set is Persona, and this one I had not heard of. It's early 2000. 2000, I think, is actually when it came out, so I didn't know about this movie. I'd never really heard about this movie. So what we have here is kind of like a bullied youth, and he shows up to school one day in this ceramic mask, and everybody's like, who is that? It adds this kind of, this like idea of who he is, and like puts like a mask above, you know, hides who he is, and he can kind of be free to do what he wants. But it kind of changes, and he's no longer like being bullied. He's almost kind of like went up the social ladder, and that says a lot, you know, putting that mask on and kind of hiding who you are from the world, but also giving yourself power. Gets into this, and you're like, that's kind of an interesting concept. So all the kids start wearing the mask. It becomes this weird fad. Some kids end up dead, and there starts to become like a mystery element of where these masks came from. These ceramic masks, a lot of the kids are wearing it, and then it gets super cluttered and weird and bizarre, and it starts to lose itself. It's kind of like, to me, and this is going to sound like an insult, and I don't mean it as, Suicide Club is a really cool movie by Science Sano, and this is like the more kiddie version, the more confusing version, and I don't, maybe I just lost it, because the Suicide Club is really hard to follow at times, really well made movie, but hard to follow. And this one, I'm watching it, and I'm like, I don't know what's happening, I don't know where we're at, and then we have this kind of reveal that a lot of people were complaining online about reviews. They're like, yeah, it's a Scooby-Doo reveal, and the movie to me lost me somewhere, and I can never reconnect. And some of these Japanese ghost stories require 2-3 viewings. These not even ghost stories, but these stories that, you know, they require a couple of viewings. But this is the one that I feel like I was the most disconnected from, the most intrigued at one point in the very beginning. So that's a cool concept and idea, right? And then for some reason it completely lost me, and I never could find my footing again in what the hell was going on or my interest in it. This is my least favorite of the set, and I've liked pretty much everything to a certain extent. I wouldn't hate this movie, but it lost me completely in a certain aspect, and I would like to like dig deeper and probably rewatch it to be fair to it. But you know, when I'm watching stuff, like I've watched a lot of Japanese films probably from this time frame. When you're looking at like Norikyo's Dinner Table, or, you know, Strange Circus, I can follow those movies. Maybe because they force you to pay attention because they're so well done. And Suicide Club is a little harder, but, you know, you get the gist of it, and you can understand some things about it. I think that Persona has a lot of elements that are solely Japanese, so maybe that's a problem, but also maybe I'm just looking too deep into it. Persona I wouldn't really recommend too strongly, but maybe just an intriguing look. Carved Slit-Mouthed Woman I did like. As far as its features are concerned, we have Confessions of the Mask, brand new interview with Persona director Takashi Komatsu. Yeah, so I need to rewatch this one again. Interesting, but it lost me at one point, and it couldn't get me back. I'm looking forward to No Roy next week, so yeah. All right, here we go. Trick or Treat from 1986, not to be confused with Trick or Treats from 82 or Trick or Treat from 2007. So yeah, this is directed by Charles Martin Smith, who was an actor in stuff like Pat Barrett and Billy the Kid and The Untouchables and whatnot. This stars Mark Price, who was on Family Ties, was it? Family Ties with Michael Gross. Yeah, this also has roles by Ozzy Osbourne and Gene Simmons. Now, we've wanted to see this a nice U.S. release for years, since there was a crummy platinum disc DVD or some shit like that. So this is kind of one of the favorite iconic 1980s horror films. This is from Red Shirt Pictures, Michael Felsher's new company. It says number 2 on there, so maybe we're going to see a new release, or maybe another one was. I'm pretty sure this was the debut release here. Synapse and Red Shirt kind of working together. Maybe this is considered somewhat of a Synapse release. This is out of print now, or sold out. I'm pretty sure they're going to do a standard edition, but it came in 3 covers. We have Sammy Kerr right on there, played by Tony Fields. Now, when you're talking heavy metal horror movies from the 80s, there's tons of them. I consider Demons one because of the soundtrack and everything, but there's a lot that went into the 90s as well. We have Black Roses, which is 87, I think. You have Rock and Roll Nightmare, infamously, right? Zombie Nightmare, kind of, because it has Thor in it. But you have this element, The Gate has it in 87. Demons, I said 85. Rock and roll horror movies are really kind of a huge sub-genre. Rocktober Blood, which is pretty early, actually, 83 maybe. And then you have Shock 'em Dead from the early 90s. Heavy Metal Massacre. There's just a lot of these. Blood tracks that have the heavy metal kind of aspect, or hair metal thing, and horror movies. But, so this is probably one of the top best ones. So Sammy Kerr is a super iconic character. Mark Price goes as Ragman. That's his kind of name, as his heavy metal name. And he's obsessed with this heavy metal rock and roll guy that went to the same high school as him. Mark Price is picked on by everybody in his school. Nobody likes him. He's kind of a misunderstood kid, of course. He loves his metal. His best friend is like, his friend is like a neighbor, kind of a nerdy character, who's always like a great character in these movies. Like one like nerdy metalhead kind of guy reminds me of the guy from The Gate, and that's pretty much his only friend. His mom is kind of divorced and whatnot, or single. We don't really know the story there. But what happens is, Gene Simmons is a DJ, and Sammy Kerr dies in a tragic fire. And this kills, Ragman. And Gene Simmons is the local DJ, and he ends up giving him like this album that he has that was never played from anybody for Sammy Kerr. It was supposed to be his new album. They're going to play it at midnight on Halloween, of course. This is a Halloween movie, although they could go a little further into the Halloween iconography and stuff like that. And that doesn't necessarily feel like Halloween all the time, but there's some pumpkins and there's a Halloween dance at the end. Very similar to Neon Maniacs, same year, of course, the Halloween dance. But, so Sammy Kerr. When he plays this thing backwards, the record, of course, Sammy Kerr starts talking to him, telling him how to get back at the evil bullies and everything like that. So, he's kind of using a little black magic, if you will. So eventually Sammy Kerr comes out of the electricity, like his radio, his speakers and everything like that. And he seems to have these electrical powers. He's all burnt. And he isn't actually singing the songs. It's a band called Fastway, which is a pretty good band. The soundtrack is great. The Trick or Treat song and a lot of the songs are super memorable. Fantastic soundtrack. But Sammy Kerr starts to want to kill people, and he goes crazy, and he's like jumping through the electrical stuff like that. And Mark Price obviously doesn't want to do it, so it's up to him and his newly kind of like love interest that used to be kind of friends with the bully to try to figure out how to stop Sammy Kerr. There's a big giant Halloween kind of dance thing where electrical shit's flying everywhere and people are getting zapped. A lot of fun, a lot of goofiness too. There's definitely 80s, definitely is self-aware of its silliness. Like the lead singer of the band gets fried, and the other guys are just like, we'll play. And it's just funny, great moment. In 4K, it looks fantastic. It was just really cool seeing this in 4K. But I was more impressed with the sound design. The 5.1 mix is made for this release, and the explosions and the thuds and the jump scares, all those loud noises, boom, boom. I was like, oh shit, man. Really good surround sound remix, fantastic. Look great, like I said, no complaints. I really like Mark Price in this movie. I think he's a good actor in here, good solid actor. There's some nudity in here. It's from like a girl that looks like 10. Like, she's not, obviously, but I was just like, geez, man. Look, you watch this movie when you're like 10, 15. Like, and then you don't register that the people in the movie now look so fucking young, and you're just this like, old guy watching this movie. You're like, oh shit, that's crazy. That's not, it's just like, it's weird. But I really love Ozzy in here. He plays like a kind of a anti like rock and roll heavy metal kind of guy, and he's fucking hilarious. Make sure you watch after the credits. Gene Simmons is pretty solid as well. Overall, the guy who plays Sammy Kerr is great too. I don't mean overall. I mean overall, I love the movie, but the guy who plays Sammy Kerr, Tony Fields, is really good. Unfortunately, he died of HIV, AIDS in 1995. His story kind of reminds me a lot of the lead actor the lead baddie in Popcorn. Very similar kind of actor, like presence, very good, very into the role. But yeah, that's very tragic, of course. So many good actors and dancers and performers died of that awful disease, especially in the 80s and 90s and whatnot. But yeah, so let's get into the special features. Love this movie. Finally get to see it in a nice American stateside release. There's a Blu-ray in here and a 4K and a CD soundtrack. I did have some imports of this on Blu-ray from Germany. That weird kind of, is it a bootleg company? You guys know what I'm talking about. But here we go. As the special features are concerned, we got a bunch. Exclusive limited edition chipboard slipcase package featuring 3 variant artworks by Justin Osborne, Devin Whitehead, and Sean Longmore. I do not know who I got here. I'm sure that he signed it somewhere. And then we also have 4K restoration, original 35 camera neg, Dolby Vision, approved by Director of Photography Robert Elswit, lossless English DTH master audio, of course 2-point theatrical mix and all new 5.1 surround sound, audio commentary director Charles Martin Smith, moderated by Mark Savage, who's a filmmaker himself, audio commentary, audio interviews with writer producer Michael S. Murphy, if that is the same Mark Savage, I assume it is, and writer Rhett Topham, moderated by film historian Michael Felsher, audio conversation with Paul Kurup and Allison Lang, authors of Satanic Panic, Pop Culture, Paranoia in the 1980s, Rock and Shock, The Making of Trick or Treat. And then we have Rock and Shock, The Making of Trick or Treat, an all-new retrospective featuring director Charles Martin Smith, actors Mark Price, Glenn Morgan, Elise Richards, and Larry Sprinkle, writer-producer Joel Sosin, costume designer Jill Onanson, assistant set costume designer Francine DeCourcy, construction foreman Tom Jones Jr., special makeup effects Everett Burnell, music executive producer Stephen E. Smith, composer Christopher Young. Of course, they have a great soundtrack, but you'll hear some Christopher Young in the background that's really well done too, and a special appearance by Gene Simmons. And the spotlight, so that's great. That's an hour and 21 minutes. It's feature length. Good stuff. And then Spotlight, tribute to Tony Fields, featuring interviews with late actors' family and friends. A Horror's Hollow's Ground, the filming locations of Trick or Treat with Sean Clark, After Midnight music video, theatrical trailers, TV spots, radio spots, still gallery featuring audio interviews with still photographer Philip V. Caruso, vintage electrical press kit, illustrated collector's booklet, essay by Michael Gingold, Sam Deegan, and Michael Felsher, fold-out double-sided Sammy Kerr fan posters, 6 double-sided collector's card sets. That is right. So look at this. Great movie, great release. Rewatching this, to be honest, it was a treat. I was just like, man, this brings me. My Aunt Judy actually turned me onto this movie when I was like 10. She's like, yeah, this looks like something you'd like. She liked it. And my Aunt Judy was awesome. I grew up with a family of people that weren't film fanatics, except my grandpa loved movies. Loved the movies. But all of the people appreciated movies, like no matter who they were. My dad loved Western films. Me and my brother grew up watching a lot of movies in general. My brother likes movies. He's not a fanatic like myself. But my whole family appreciated film to some extent, and I'm glad that they did. I became kind of like the crazy one. But hey, it is what it is. Great release, Trick or Treat, love it. Alright, next up is from Strand Releasing, and this is 2013, if I'm not mistaken. This is the same duo of Bruno Fazzani and Helene Catet, who directed Amir, sorry. And this is The Strange Color of Your Body's Tears. This is kind of a bigger film, I would say, bigger budget and everything. So, yeah, I had never seen this before. So I popped this in. I was kind of excited to check it out. It's a Neo Giallo. And Neo Giallis are very strange to me, or Giallos, however you want to put it. They're just bizarre. Like, if you take any still from the movie and show somebody, like, that looks just like a 1960s, 70s Giallo. It looks perfect. But then, like, if you start watching the movies, like, everything is super artistic, especially just like imagine like a French people making like a Neo Giallo. You know, it's gonna be super artsy and everything like that. So like you're watching it and you're like, oh yeah, this is very beautiful, very well done. But like when I watch it, the cinematography to me always feels like they're trying to show off. And I don't mean this as an insult, really, but it always just like, look how good we are, look how stylish this is, look how wild and crazy this is. But, like, when I watch a lot of the old Gialli, like, yes, the cinematography is fucking fantastic, especially when you look at Blood and Black Lace, the lighting and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of the filmmaking techniques and stuff are done for necessity. Like when they're using like the DPs, like the Steadicam and stuff. He's like, well, we did this zoom and we did this because we wanted this all in one take because it saves on the setups. And there is a super there is an artistic flair to all the giallo, especially like Mario Bava. But in a lot of times, it was done out of necessity to save for setups. And it's going to sound weird, but there's nothing done in Strange Color of Your Body's Tears for necessity. This is definitely like a self-indulgent, super crazy art film. And all the music, I'm pretty sure, is lifted from the other giallo movies and giallo movies. So I'm like, that's always so weird to me. People are like, great soundtrack. It's like, yeah, none of it's made for the fucking movie. From what us, and if I can tell, and if I'm wrong here, I will eat my own words, because the music is fantastic, but it's all very familiar to me from other movies. I can't pinpoint exactly where they're from. So that's just always kind of a weird thing to me. You can like use a drop or a sample in a movie, and like I like that. But if the whole thing is like a lifted soundtrack, I'm like I know it's like, yeah, it's cool, but who gives a fuck at the same time? Because it's like, and a lot of times like it doesn't fit. It's like just brushing your teeth, and it's like you hear the music from Tentacles or some shit. It's not in here, but you wouldn't be surprised if it was. Hell, it might be. It's used in every other fucking movie. And I'm saying that, like, this is a really artistically well done movie. And I don't hate this movie at all. But what I thought was going to be like an 8.5, a 9, is like a 7. Like, it's so fucking bizarre and weird and hard to follow for its own. And it's almost like purposely done hard to follow. Like, I'm not even so sure if you're supposed to know exactly what's going on. I'm sure you could decipher it, but by that, like, it's so like into the artistic elements that I'm almost like stepping back from the story and being like, you kind of lost me. It's not like Suspiria where like I like love it so much that I'm willing to watch it 10 times just to get exactly what I think's happening, even though it's not that hard to follow after a while. Of course, you just kind of get into like the nightmare logic. And this feels more like something in a line of like a Suspiria or something. It's less like, I know like there's no like supernatural elements in this, but it feels more like that. But you know, I guess if I had to compare it to, I'd say like, I would say what? All the Colors of the Dark or something like that, because that has like the aspects of a giallo, but it also is just giallo, but it's also fucking nuts. So it's almost like the psychedelic one more so in the weird aspect. So we kind of follow this character who gets back from a business trip, and he goes back to his like super fancy apartment where there's a bunch of other people that live there that are all fucking bizarre and weird and everything like that. And his wife is missing. She's completely gone. He's like, what the hell's going on? So he's not confused. He gets drunk. He starts calling everybody in the apartment like, where is she? Do you guys know where she is? Annoying everyone. Somebody on like a higher up floor says, come up here, and I know what happened. So she tells her whole giant fucking story about her husband digging a hole in the ceiling and her husband treating her like shit and tying her down to all this weird shit. A cop comes in and starts to be like talk to him, and he tells his whole elaborate fucking weird ass story. We realize that there's hidden walls within this apartment, and there's all sorts of crazy shit going on, and there's a whole bunch of hidden stuff, and everybody's a weird, and you're like, there's a character that obviously was tortured when they were very young, and it all ties things together. And I was like, I don't necessarily know how close we are. Everything is tied up and everything. The special effects are pretty good. The artistic elements are great. We have times when like we'll do a split shot and the character's top half is here and the other character's bottom half is here kind of talking, and you're just like, this is fucking wild. But it's more concerned about the artistic elements, which I shouldn't say that about, like, you know, like when I said that about Jolly doing it for necessity, that's not always true, because Dario Argento could do whatever the fuck he wanted, and that shot in Tenebrae when it goes down the side of the building, you're like, this is definitely showing off. But hey, it's Dario and Bava, Mario Bava are probably going to show off a little bit, right? So this is more inspired by, I'd say, with like the show off kind of like giallo movies, and not Suspiria is not a giallo or Inferno's not, but in that style, right? There's definitely like it's definitely inspired by these, but I don't necessarily know how much it feels like a genuine one to me. Like stills and moments maybe, but it never, like, if you were to put this on and be like, this is a 70s giallo, like, no, it's fucking not. Like, it's not. It's really not. Even if you degraded the footage, you're like, I don't think so. Overall, I like it. It's good. Don't expect to just dive in and be like, well, here's the story, because I was like, what? Okay. And then I was like, I gotta, like, I just, maybe my brain fell out halfway through and I lost brain cells, because it's like, I watched so many fucking movies this week. I watched like 20 movies this week in like 7 days. I don't know what's wrong with me, alright? But hey, it is what it is. This is Strange Color of Your Body's Tears. Great title. And I look forward to watching Let the Corpses Tan, which is another film I think that this duo did. All right, we're going to get to some 2024 movies. Maybe I'll be a little bit more brief with the 2024 movies. Now, this is a filmmaker here, Bruce Longo, which I've heard a lot of good things about, like on Sick on Cinema and everything like that. And I've heard people mention this, and he directs like kind of modern day SOV films, which kind of seems to be having like this movement. The person who did The Emasculator, Susanna, I can't think, her last name's pretty hard to pronounce. I don't want to fuck it up, so I won't say it, but she also did Night of the Zodiac, doing SOV movies. There's also a couple other people shooting on SOV. James Bell is always kind of shot in that kind of camera style. So we have Coven of the Black Cube, and Bruce Longo has directed 4 movies. Pumpkin Man, which is kind of like a collaboration with David the Rock Nelson remake kind of style thing. Blood Sick Psychosis, and what was the other one he did? A Corpse for Christmas. So this is his 4th feature film here, and this is like an hour and 37 minutes, so it's quite long SOV kind of movie here. So right away, the story's pretty cool. We kind of have this group of witches, kind of, I think are they in like the Michigan area making this movie? I would say so, kind of deal. So this group of witches kind of deal, and they run this store, this occult store, and they're basically picking up men and killing them. A lot of abusive, shitty men. So women will go to this store and say, listen, I need something to get rid of my deadbeat fucking husband or my deadbeat boyfriend. And the men in this movie are portrayed as, slobby, gross, just pieces of shit. At one point, there's even like an abusive guy and a gay couple, and you're just like, yeah, there's a lot of trashy fucking people in this movie that you really don't like. There's a couple of people I recognize for sure. Josh Schaefer from Lunch Meat. Is he from Lunch Meat Video? I think he was always used to go to Wasteland. Cool guy. He's actually got a big role in this movie. Recognized him right away. There's also a lot of cameos and shout outs from independent directors, including Chris Seaver, David the Rock Nelson, and the movie's almost stopped, like come to a stalemate when they pop in, and it's like, yes, they're like these cameos, and that's probably, I like the idea of it. I like the shout-outs. I like the references. They're cute at times. But it does put the movie at like a longer run time than it probably needs to be, and it comes to a snail's pace at just a couple times. You know what I mean? I won't hold it too far against it, because the movie's pretty fucking ambitious for a SOV, low-budget horror film. A lot of people would not try this. It's got a decent-sized cast. It's got a decent amount of locations here and there, shot of the streets, which I like, and I like the SOV kind of style. This movie's fairly serious. It's not a goofy, hey, this sucks kind of deal, which I don't mind necessarily, but I prefer kind of like either trying your best, even if it is a comedy or whatnot. And I'm not saying that a lot of people don't do that, because I think most of them do try their best. But there is kind of an element of like a self like crap, like where they just make a movie bad on purpose, which I'm never been a fan of. This is definitely not that. So kind of follows the story of, I can't think, she's like in a lesbian relationship, and her girlfriend is in a band, and the band is also like Milo's in there, who's Josh Schaefer, and he's in the band, and he runs this head shop video store kind of deal. So we have all these kind of low budget horror references and videotapes and all this kind of thing like there, and all these characters kind of intermingle around this kind of coven of witches, and a lot of the characters end up getting killed. They fall in love, there's tragedy, all this kind of stuff, spells, people puking and all this kind of stuff. It's not as gratuitous as you would think when you're looking at gore and violence and stuff. There is some there, and it's fairly well done. It's not a gore film. It's not a gore film. And then there's some nudity in here and whatnot. I'm sure people will be interested in that kind of aspect, because a lot of the mainstream horror films don't really have nudity, especially if they play theatrically anymore. They kind of push that out, but a lot of the independent movies still go there. Overall, I like this. I think it's pretty interesting. I'll definitely check out Blood Sick Psychosis and Corpse for Christmas. I did not buy Pumpkin Man. If he's at Wasteland again, I'll buy it. I'll pick up Pumpkin Man. But yeah, this is pretty decent. I know Joe Swinberg's also in here. I should mention that. I forgot. I didn't even recognize him. Joe Swinberg was, kind of the king of the mumblecore movies. He's in You're Next and directed a bunch of films as well. And it also mentions Tina Kraus, of course, has a cameo popping up a couple times here. Tina Kraus was in a lot of the Wave production films, and she's in Bloodletting, which is one of my all-time favorite SOV movies. So huge shout-outs to a lot of the people in here. And I think that the predominantly female cast did a good job. Enjoy it overall. And the opening has like a big group of people, so it is ambitious. I like it. I'm not madly in love with it, but you got to give props when a filmmaker seems to try really hard. No matter how you personally feel about the movie, I like it overall. But I some of the cameos go on a little longer than I would like them to, if that makes any sense. And I think almost every independent horror film I've ever seen, including probably ones that I made, do that kind of shit where they like have these shout outs to horror films and whatnot, because they want to play it forward. They want to like you show their love, and they want to say, hey man, I'm one of you guys. I know what the fuck I'm talking about, and I think that you may enjoy this. And sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. But overall, Coven of the Black Cube by Bruce Longo, pretty cool special features on here. Commentary with writers Bruce Longo, Zoe Angelina, Josh Schaefer, and DP Michael D. Francisco. I'm probably sure I pronounced some one of their names wrong. It also has subtitles, which I liked, because a lot of independent releases do not have fucking subtitles on them, but this does. This is a made-on-demand disc. Check it out. It sounds like it's up your alley if you like independent movies, you like SOVs. Also, when I'm talking about modern-day SOV directors, got to give Maddie Deering a shout-out as well, who did Bathtub Shark Attack and Spirit Animal and whatnot. So yeah, pretty fun stuff. Check it out if it sounds like it's up your alley. A serious kind of SOV horror film. Pretty cool. Okay, boy, I got a lot of 2024 movies, so it's going to be a while, but we're going to hop into this. First one up is Blink Twice. This stars Channing Tatum. It has Haley Joel Osment in here. Osborne? I can't think Osborne. I'm all mixing up. Everything like that. Christian Slater's in here. There's a lot of other. Zoe Kravitz directed it. She's an actress. This is her directorial debut. And the one thing I did notice about a lot of 2024 horror movies is there's a huge female presence in the direction, and a lot of the movies are coming out and they're a little bit different than the stuff I'm used to, and I'm enjoying this year a lot because of it. I think that it's interesting always to have different people making these movies, even if they're similar plots, like a lot of stuff you watch, like Strange Darling and stuff like, or a lot of movies that you've seen before, and just doing it a little different, in a different way, from a different aspect and stuff like that is cool. And this one, I really like this. So Blink Twice, like right away you see the title and the premise and the trailer, you're like, this feels like something that Jordan Peele would kind of make, kind of that style of horror film, which, you know, is reminiscent of other filmmakers and stuff like that before him. So I'm watching this, and I'm immediately into it. It's a great cast, and Channing Tatum is kind of like a billionaire kind of guy who's on an apology tour, if you will, because he did a lot of unspeakable shitty things. It seemed like he had multiple wives and whatnot, and just like that, he was a philanthropist or whatever you call that. And now he's apologizing and whatnot. Our main character here is kind of like works as a waitress, kind of like a catering. I'd say like a major catering kind of company deal if you're not. So I think that's kind of where she's at in this aspect. And her like best friend / sister, I'm not sure if they're actually related or not, are kind of like catering this event. And she knows that Channing Tatum at one point had like a small interaction at one point. So what happens is, she's catering these people, and there's like an interaction, and they end up, Channing Tatum's like, hey, come to my private island. It's going to be a blast. I'm having some friends with me, and there'll be some other girls. Bring you and your sister, your friend with you, and it'll be a blast. Trust me, you don't got to worry about anything food. So they go to this giant private island, and immediately you think like private island. You're thinking all these like rich, creepy billionaires, and you would be thinking kind of right. Now, if I get into any more depths of this movie, I'm going to spoil it. And I've heard so many people talk about this movie and say it's really great, it's really disturbing. I don't want to spoil anything, and leave it at that. So it is really great. It could be really disturbing for some people, but I don't want to spoil anything. But now I'm going to fucking spoil it. So overall, before I spoil this thing, the acting's really great. It was good to see a mixture of these characters. Not seeing Haley Joel, Joel is Osborne. I can't think of his Osment. I think it's Osment. And a long time in this kind of role. He was in Tusk and stuff, but this is a role that's just so creepy. Love Christian Slater always, and to put himself as a creep is really good. Kyle MacLachlan's in here, which is nice. I can't think of the actresses' names. Like, the guys are more like classical older actors, and I can't think of a lot of the actresses' names, although they're all really good, and I enjoyed all their characters and whatnot. So saying that, this is a really good movie. The twist is kind of obvious to somewhat what's going on, but yeah, so here we go. It gets pretty fucking dark. So essentially this island is kind of like Rape Island. That's basically what's happening here. So these rich people are picking out their own private woman. There's 5 guys. They pick out these 5 women, and they're taking them in. They're raping them, and then they're giving them something where they completely forget everything. A lot of the helpers around the island seem to know that something's up. They don't really speak English. There's these kind of snakes around, that these vipers that are venomous, of course, but the venom is not enough to kill you, but they do have a side effect. The venom has a potency that will make you remember. So this is where shit gets kind of crazy, where one of the characters gets bit by the snake, and it starts to like kind of trigger these events where the girls start to realize something's up, something's wrong. And it's cool because the women have to realize how to survive while acting like they don't, and it becomes this really kind of tense stuff here, and it's just a really well done like third act, to where like there's a revolt, of course, and Christian Slater in here is such a fucking creep that some of his dialogue is so great when he's all fucked up laying there and it's like, well, that's my best friend. He's like, what? And he's just, to play a character like that, would take some balls. There's a graphic, like massive rape scene in here that I didn't really expect to see, and I was just like, holy shit, they went there. But this is one of the best horror films of the year. People are like, I consider it fucking horror. It's pretty fucking nasty and wild, but good intrigue, good mystery, good performances in here. I would really recommend Blink Twice. And Channing Tatum's always that guy to me that, like, when he first came out, I was like, he's in these dumb dance movies. I don't care, because I was young and stupid. But then, like, as he progresses in his career, this guy's always, like, either making fun of himself, like This Is the End, or 21 Jump Street, being hilarious, or he's just good, or popping up in Hateful Eight and just doing a fucking awesome job. He's just a good actor, and he's fun. And he's not afraid to be nasty as fuck like this movie. But it adds an element, too, like at the end where you're like, whoa, oh shit, maybe he's involved in taking this stuff, too. He doesn't remember his horrible accident. What's more, is it a worse punishment, right, to remember everything awful you've ever done, and if it's so awful that you completely blank it out of your mind as well? Like, fuck, great movie, Blink Twice. Okay, this next one, I'm definitely going to read off the thing so I don't mess up the name, and you'll understand why. Humanistic vampire seeking consenting suicidal person. Yeah, so this is a French film, and a lot of people have compared this to, like, The Girl Walks Home Alone, and I can see the same kind of energy, kind of like, this is more comedic, of course, darker comedic film, and this has that energy. It also has the energy of what is the film that had Christopher Lloyd and the I Am Not a Serial Killer kind of energy. If that's the movie, I think it was a pretty good movie too. From 2016, 17. It's been a long time. I've been doing this a long time. I'm getting older every day. So, humanistic vampire seeking a consenting suicidal person. I think we'll go with that. We'll call it humanistic vampire. So, this is a fun kind of cutesy movie. They paint this world, of course, where vampires have pretty much well organized their life, and our main character here is a young vampire, and she has a conscience. She doesn't want to kill. She doesn't want to eat people. She doesn't want to suck blood and murder to carry on her existence. So she basically lives with her parents, who are still taking care of her when she's of that age, of course. And she's like fucking like 68 years old or something like that in that aspect. But she looks about 18, 19, if that. So that's kind of the element here. But it's so weird to me. Like, they drink the blood out of the bags and everything. And I'm like, so they have gone to the process of being so organized that they have psychiatrists and doctors and all this kind of stuff, and they drink out of bags. But they have not taken over a couple blood banks to where the fact that they don't have to kill people every night. Dumb. And that's the only whole hang-up I had on the entire movie. Besides that, I was bothered by it for a slight second, but then I was like, okay, I'm over it. I can get past it. So, of course, they're going to push her out of the house, out of the nest, and be like, you got to go live with your cousin who's going to teach you how to kill, how to be a real vampire. And at the same time, there's this like kid from high school that is incredibly suicidal. He doesn't want to be alive because he's always constantly picked on. He doesn't feel like he belongs anywhere. It's just a really sad kind of individual, but, a good-hearted person, but he also has, he doesn't feel like he belongs. So, of course, these two are going to meet up, and we're going to have kind of like a more comedic Let the Right One In style thing. The great Swedish vampire film from 2008. Fantastic movie if you haven't seen it. Highly recommended. So we kind of have that element in here as well. But what happens is they obviously are going to have some sort of loving relationship and fall in, and there's going to be some funny hijinks, and there's going to be a couple murders and everything like that. And they're going to kind of try to figure out how to be vampires with conscience, right? With who thinks about their acts. I like this overall. I think it's fun. There's some really fun, cute moments. It's a good kind of heartwarming vampire tale that's funny and just cute. I guess that's what you call it, humanistic vampire seeking consensual suicidal person, if you will. Good stuff, enjoyable for sure. Okay, the next one up is The First Omen. This is a prequel, of course, to the 1976 Richard Donner classic, The Omen. So, I'd heard a lot of great things about this. Everyone's like, you got Immaculate, you got The First Omen. They're the same fucking story, the same movie, just done a little differently. Some prefer Immaculate, some prefer The First Omen. I'm going to say this here, I prefer Immaculate. Now, The First Omen is about 2 hours long. It opens up with a cool scene with, is it Charles Dance in the very opening? And I can't think of the other priest in here. Oh, it's the guy from The Witch with the bellowing voice, the father. Great actor. Charles Dance, also a great actor, of course. And so this is the prequel to The Omen. So we basically learn that there's this woman who is going to join this convent and everything like this. I'm probably going to mix up this whole story. And, they're trying to get her pregnant with another kind of character and whatnot. I don't want to spoil anything, but she immediately goes in there and she realizes that something's not right. There's a lot of jealousy and hate. I don't really remember this that much because it's a lot like Immaculate, and it's a decently made movie. It's decently directed. It's not a poorly done film at all. Like, cinematography's good, soundtrack is pretty good, acting is good, story is okay. The story is good because Immaculate's the same story. But what I will say is this movie must placate to the Omen. It must have shoutouts to the Omen. So there is a murder that's recreated from the Omen, and you're like, whatever. Why do that? Just so you can remind people. And I know the people watching this probably don't know what the Omen is when they're theaters. And the very ending is, spoiler here, it's a Marvel fucking stinger. It's like, his name is Damien. And I was just like... The movie's at its worst when it has to constantly remind you that it is a prequel to the Omen. It's a fine movie, but that really takes it down a notch. And it's a similar story to Immaculate. I don't think it's gratuitous as Immaculate. There is a really crazy kind of weird kind of dream sequence that I think a lot of people were talking about, which I think pushes the boundaries for a mainstream horror movie, which I love. Thank you for that. But the overall kind of movie as a whole is just good. It's not great. I didn't love it. The whole idea that it has to constantly placate to the Omen, or not placate, it's a prequel, so it has to do this, right? And remind everybody, and it just feels like it's just more of a Marvel kind of, like, it's Immaculate Marvel Immaculate, that's what I would call it. It's not for me. It's also a subgenre that I'm not absolutely thrilled with, and I've had this conversation with friends and stuff like this. So when we get a lot of Americans making religious horror and things like that, and I completely agree, and I've said this with other people too, and I know it's kind of a sentiment that I think most people do agree. When you get like Fulci or somebody, or a lot of the Italians or Spanish or Mexican filmmakers from yesteryear making these movies about the church, where they condemn them, but also they have some strong belief in the system, it feels like it's more genuine, right? Like, they come from the system, they know the system, they have problems with the system, maybe they have some faith in it, or they have some animosity that was truly earned because they were in there and they were treated wrong, or they still love it. Like, I think Troy Howarth was saying something about Fulci, he always quoted, who was it? Was it Buñuel? But said They Got Him an Atheist, which is a comedy, but, he said Fulci said something along those lines as well, like, thank God he wishes he was like that, but he can never step away from the church, so there's always, like, inside, like, his superstition in his movies comes across genuine. Well, 90% of the American horror films that have something negative to say about religion, it comes from an outsider, and it doesn't seem genuine to me. Although I was never overly religious, I had, some run-ins with religion growing up, and I'm not an insider. I would never make something like this because it would be kind of like talking out my ass. It wouldn't really feel genuine. Now, I'm not saying that about every filmmaker. I know that Scott Derrickson was part of evangelical church, so, there's that as well, and I know that something like Alice, Sweet Alice seemed completely genuine to me. And this is also an outsider judging what's more realistic or not. But for me, the Italian films always seemed super genuine, and I always felt like they worked, and they didn't seem like they were just, super judgmental for no reason. And I'm not saying that the churches don't deserve to be judged. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I'd like it to be somebody, write what you know. And I'm not saying that these directors don't know. I'm just saying that it doesn't seem as genuine as something like, Don't Torture a Duckling, or A la Carta, or The Church by Michele Soavi, or, Who Saw Her Die, or Alice, Sweet Alice. So, or even The Exorcist. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like these people were, like, true blue believers at one point in their life. Overall, first Omen, it's good. It's not great. The reminder that it has to be Omen all the fucking time, it's a little cringy for me. So, it's not a favorite. I think it's okay. Okay, now we have a 2024 movie, Trap, by M. Night Shyamalan. And you know what? I haven't seen a new M. Night Shyamalan movie in a long time. People say Knock at the Cabin was good. I haven't seen The Visit. I haven't seen Old. I haven't seen Split. I haven't seen Glass. I kind of lost interest in his movies, for a while. And it's not like I hated any of his movies to, like, the core. I watched Signs I liked. I liked Unbreakable. I liked Signs, Unbreakable, and Sixth Sense I all liked. Didn't love The Village when it came out, but that doesn't mean shit now. I was just young and I'm angry. Like, you're catching on a bandwagon. Everybody hates M. Night Shyamalan now. So do I. And I was just like 15, 16 and not talking on my ass, right? So, I don't hate him as a filmmaker. Trapped, I heard some interesting things about. Like, the trailer gives everything away. Like, Josh Hartnett's going to this concert concert, this big pop star concert where he's taking his daughter and everything like that. And he realizes, this concert was thrown on to catch a serial killer who's going to be in this concert. And Josh Hartnett is that fucking serial killer. He is the butcher. So everything is set up that he is trapped in this concert. He's got to find his fucking way out. And it ends up like you're like rooting for him to get out for some reason, even though he's a horrible killer and everything. And you're just wondering how he's going to do it. And the fun of this movie is him kind of like doing all these clever little ways, stealing a tag, taking a suit, and moving through this crowd and everything, and learning things, and just being a clever serial killer. At the same time, we have like this FBI agent who's an expert on killers talking on the radio, but he's stolen a radio, so he's hearing all the information, which makes it fun, makes it clever, and he's going to, of course, tie into this, get close to this like big pop star and everything by lies and manipulation. At times, Josh Hartnett's performance is really bizarre to me, but it can be bizarre. It can be a disingenuous feeling because he is a serial killer masking a fake humanity about himself. So when he talks and interacts with people, if it seems a little wonky, seems a little disingenuous and weird, I think that is okay. It just should make you feel a little off-put, like this guy is not right. And I don't know if it's a good performance or a bad performance, but I know it's a weird-ass performance, and I think it probably works for this movie. Everyone else is fine. No one's fucking fantastic. It's kind of weird. Like, a lot of the dialogue is weird, and I see a lot of reviews opinion. Has M. Night Shyamalan ever had a conversation with a human being? And you're like, I don't know if he has. I don't know. His conversation dialogue is always a little iffy, and it takes some heavy actors to deliver that shit like gold, and I think sometimes, it works well. Unbreakable, from what I remember, had good dialogue and good performances, and, Sixth Sense and Signs, but, sometimes if you're not working with like heavyweights, maybe sometimes the dialogue can be a little weird, a little wonky, and I do think it is a little wonky in here. The second half of the movie is more on the road. This movie's a little too long for what it is. Overall, it's okay. It's not a realistic movie, so if somebody goes in here like, that's bullshit, that's nonsense. I mean, the character has a certain comedy quality to him. Like, there's a lot of the characters that are just like comic relief and weird. We have point of view stuff at times, which is bizarre, and it's weird because like somebody like Jordan Peele will add comedy into his movies. He'll have a comedic character, and like, what the fuck? Why did I blank out of this third horror film? The one where it's like the Sky Tremors movie, which I really liked. But he'll have comedy characters like Us and all those kind of movies like that. His Get Out, but Nope. It's called Nope. They're Nope, and they come across genuine. They fit into the world he's creating. Now, when M. Night Shyamalan does it, it doesn't really feel as genuine. And I feel like it's kind of going for the same vibe. He's just not as good at it. Just my take. Okay movie. Not great. I like Josh Hartnett. It's good seeing him, in a movie as a starring role. His daughter does a decent job. M. Night Shyamalan's daughter does a decent job in here as well. But it's okay. Trap, it's not great. I don't hate it. I don't love it. It's not going to be in my top movies of the year, but I think it's worth a watch if it sounds like it. This is a fun family watch. Probably get away with watching it with your family. It's not overly gratuitous or anything like that. Okay, the next one here is Humane by Caitlin Cronenberg, David Cronenberg's daughter. Now we're getting a big buzz about Cronenberg's son, directing the 3 horror films, Antiviral, Possessor, and of course, Infinity Pool. His daughter's also making movies, and this is Humane. I think it was made in 2023, wide release 2024. Correct me if I'm wrong here. So this is definitely like a satirical film. It has Jay Baruchel in it from stuff like Random Acts of Violence and This Is the End. He directed Random Acts of Violence. Underrated movie. I know my friend Christian over at Exploding Head says the same thing, and I know he's always like, does anybody else like this movie? I like that fucking movie. It was in my top 10 of the year. So Jay Baruchel is a star in this film. As far as the other actors in here, the big name is probably Peter Gallagher from stuff like American Beauty and a bunch of other movies, kind of an older, kind of distinguished, handsome looking gentleman. So we're in the future, or maybe even modern times. It's not too far off, right guys? So this is Humane, and I guess the world's coming to an end over global warming and climate change and all this kind of stuff, and there's just not enough food, there's just not enough stuff, and we got to cut out 20% of our population or we're all going to end up dead. So they're like they're giving people money to sign up for basically suicide, killing yourself, assisted suicide, and basically they'll give you a bunch of money and you'll be a hero, you'll get celebrated. But it's a good way for a lot of older folks to kind of sign up and give their family a good start or whatnot. So Peter Gallagher is rich. He's like a TV kind of host. He is a very he's always worried about what people think of him. He calls in his family, 4 kids. One is an originally adopted kid, so there's some weird animosity among them as well. One of the grandkids shows up, not supposed to be there. Peter Gallagher has remarried, and he has this wife, of course, who's also famous. She's like a top chef, works at a restaurant. So he calls his whole family together, and they obviously do not work well together. together. They're all different personalities. One's a struggling actress, one is a politician type, one is, a recovering addict, and one is kind of like a tough kind of, I guess would say, businesswoman. So none of them really share any similarity. They don't really know each other very well. They're a disconnected, disjointed, broken family. Peter Gallagher calls in everybody. He says, I just want this to be something special. I miss you guys. And he tells everyone, I signed up for this. Me and my wife had signed up for this assisted suicide to be patriotic, to give you guys a start. And this starts a huge argument and everything like that. So what happens is that guy shows up to do the suicide, and somebody who signed up runs away. Peter Gallagher is like, oh shit, we want to postpone this. The guy who's doing the suicide reminds me a lot of like a Don Rickles style kind of character. He's really entertaining, really funny, really great performance in here. And he's a government guy, and what he's going to do is he's going to get his two bodies no matter fucking what. And he seems to take some sick enjoyment out of these people tearing at each other's throats. So it's everybody going against each other and whatnot. And, of course, people are backstabbing each other, literally, and whatnot, and this guy's enjoying it outside. And there's a lot of comedic moments with him and the granddaughter talking to each other. But overall, this is a fun movie. It has some good moments. The third act, I think, is the weakest, but overall, I think this is a good film with pretty solid performances. Jay Baruchel is actually a great actor. I always like him. He always plays kind of sleazy, Weasley kind of guy. He's good at it. But overall, this is a fun movie with good satire. Like, you could see somebody like Paul Verhoeven directing something like this. Overall, I like Humane. It's good stuff. It's entertaining. I would check it out. All right, the next one is A Quiet Place Day One. I've never seen any of the Quiet Place movies, but I was like, it's day one. I can figure it out, right? I know this is a popular movie there, so I popped it in, decided to start watching this. This stars Lupita. I can't think of her last name. She's a great actress. She's in Us, and she was in that Little Monsters movie. Not the 1989 Little Monsters, but a different one that came out a few years back. Fun little zombie movie kind of deal. So this is the beginning of the crazy outbreak of these monsters. Of course, the Quiet Place is you have to be quiet or these monsters will hear you and rip you to shreds. So this takes place in New York, and we have Lupita, who is suffering from cancer. She's actively dying, and she's with in hospice with a bunch of other people who are much older than her. She feels like she got ripped off. Of course, she has a cat named Frodo, best character of the year is this little cat Frodo. It's a help cat. What are the cats that help you? Like, I don't remember what they call that, whatnot, but this cat's going everywhere with her. So in the beginning, her kind of like group leader guy who's taking care of them decides, hey, let's go to this place. She's like, only if we get pizza on the way back. And while they're watching this play, which actually makes her very upset because there's this great moment in here of hope, and then it's shattered, and it just kind of reminds her of her fucking existence, right? The monsters attack, and it's really intense and really scary, and you're always constantly worried about this fucking cat. She gives a great performance, and a lot of people are killed. The whole city is destroyed, and you gotta kind of see these moments of building up where there's like people trying to survive and go a certain way because they're trying to get off the island and the water and everything, and like when too many people get together, you're like, oh shit, shit's gonna go down. But I think it's Clifton Collins actually shows up as a character, and those two kind of form this friendship, and they have to communicate in silence, and we learn more about Lupita's backstory and her life and everything, and while we have to run through these crazy obstacles, worried about her and Collins and the cat, and we know where this is going, right? When somebody's doomed to die, it's kind of a weird element, and I like putting somebody in this element, right? Somebody who's doesn't really care if they live or die because it's already over. You might as well, not just die quietly in a bed, but there's also moments of like struggling to like find your pain meds. This is overall a good film. I never saw any of these, so watching it, I didn't know the connections if the characters do, and I think they do. One of the actors pops up, Dejan. I've seen this guy in a bunch of stuff. He's in a couple Marvel movies, and he's in Blood Diamond. I think he's the same actor in Blood Diamond. But yeah, I never saw Blood Diamond. I don't remember the cover art though. But he is just he's a good actor. I imagine he's got to be in one of the other ones because he's just too good to be in a small of a role. This is all pretty good. I enjoyed it. I liked it, and I think people would like this one. I was a little disappointed. I thought the monsters would be a little cooler. They're not bad. I thought they'd be a little cooler than they were. Quiet Place Day One, good stuff. I would recommend it if you like apocalyptic kind of crazy movies, a lot of action, like The War of the Worlds 2005 or something like that. Check it out.
all these things, then you just attack me right now. So some of you are still human. This thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide inside an imitation. It'll fight if it has to, but it's vulnerable out in the open. If it takes us over, then it has no more enemies. Nobody left to kill it. And then it's won.
Son of a bitch, you moved the cemetery, but you left the bodies, didn't you? You son of a bitch, you left the bodies and you only moved the headstones! You only moved the headstones! Why? Why?
For a girl like you to come into my life, I've been waiting for a girl like you who love and will survive. I've been waiting someone new to make me feel alive. Yeah, waiting for a girl like you to come into my life.
You bitch! You called me a bitch!
What's in the basket?
Open season!
How do we know she is alive?
Say, please stop it. There's no more time. You've got to... Please stop it. Stop it now. Turn it off. Turn it off. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop
All right, we're going to get into this one from 88 Films here, and this is the kid from Kwangtung, and this is listed as a horror film on Letterboxd. It's really not, guys. It's really not, but hey, it is what it is. So essentially what we have here is this kind of 1982 kind of fun kind of comedy kung fu movie. There is a horror aspect in it that they mentioned, kind of like in the hopping vampires comedic element here. So what we have is, I imagine, these two different kind of schools, which is a very common kind of storyline in here. I think they're schools. It's kind of just a wacky all over the place kind of thing. And basically, these two schools do not like each other. They have two old masters that obviously have some beef. And in the very beginning, like, they have these characters interacting, and they have like their signs for their school, and they're kind of competing in this aspect where they dress up like these big animals. And the good guys, I guess you'll say, are the centipede, and they're going against the chicken, and we have a lot of zany weird shit going back and forth. And our centipede school breaks the sign of the chicken school or the cock school, and it completely pisses them off. And this causes this like forever hated thing. And I think there's other characters that are kind of like higher up and more evil, mean-spirited, that get involved in everything like that. And as it progresses, we have like the brothers and the father and stuff, like kind of like there's a slew of characters. A couple of them are related, of course, and like as it progresses, like we kind of are joined by this female character, witnesses one of the characters bathing by the like a comedic moment and everything like that. So this movie goes back and forth between these like really good fun fight scenes that are well choreographed between all these characters, and just complete bullshit, silly, funny stuff. That's very typical for Hong Kong. This one is even a little further further, and then be in the goofiness and stuff like that. It is, I wouldn't say it's as crazy and as wacky as the Two Taoist tales that Eureka, I think, put out, which are just completely off the wall, zany fucking craziness. This is not quite as crazy as that, but it does have its weird kind of goofy kind of moments. The moment that is considered kind of in a horror element is like they have to kind of steal this gold coin out of this dead guy's thing. And you guys know with the Hong Kong films and Hong Kong, the history, they kind of have like, I don't know if this is true history or not, but I know how they move the bodies. That whole history, they kind of explain that in the Shaolin kind of shadow, I think. But they have the curses on the dead bodies. And they have somebody with a gold coin, so these guys all kind of sneak in, and they're trying to steal this gold coin and competing with the hopping vampire kind of deal. So that's where the comedy and the kind of horror fantastical elements enter. But of course, this whole movie's going to end in a giant fight scene where a bunch of people die after, of course, a father and son are killed. There's a lot of revenge, and we have this big battle. Overall, this is okay. It's not amazing. The fights are great. The story's not great. The story's not very memorable, to be honest. Like, it's hard to recall a lot of the stuff. I know the scenes that happen, but I don't know how exactly how it all ties together, who everybody is. The kid from Kwangtung is good. If you're looking for a fight scenes and a goofy kind of silliness, overall, it's decent. It's not great. It's directed by a guy who is an actor as well, who directed a handful of movies. There's no special features on it, which is unfortunate. You have it in English, and of course, you have Cantonese. Language. You have two language things here. So 1982, check it out if it sounds like it's up your alley. All right, the next one from 1982 is Wild, guys, and this is Big Meat Eater from 1982. This is a comedy, musical, horror film, sci-fi, it has everything. This was actually made in 82, while the musical, like on Broadway kind of deal, I don't know if it went to Broadway, but musical of Little Shop of Horrors was released later in 1982 than this one. So this was April, and that was released in May or something along the lines, and went big on Broadway till like June, July or something, got bigger. So this movie technically came out before the Little Shop of Horrors musical, which had a movie version in 86. So this is a little ahead of its time. Of course, we had kind of horror musicals like Phantom of Paradise or The Rocky Horror Picture Show or Shock Treatment. So it's not exactly the most original thing ever, but like when I look at this, I'm like, this feels like Little Shop of Horrors, the musical. This feels like Ed Wood in a lot of aspects, and this is just a bizarre, weird movie, super Canadian. So I don't know how to fucking explain this. We have aliens, we have cannibals, we have goofiness, we have a bunch of zany weird ass characters. So what happens is it kind of follows the story of this big guy named Abula who works at a butcher shop, which immediately reminds me of the classic wrestler, right? Abula the Butcher, who's like this big heavy crazy guy in real like life and in the fucking wrestling business. So what happens is he kind of enters this town and he like gets involved with like this mafia guy, and he kills this mafia guy and he throws him in the freezer. He ends up working at this butcher shop where the guy's trying to run it, and he's always goofy and over the top, like he's always like answering questions for him and this guy and whatnot. It reminds me also of Blood Diner or something along those lines. But these aliens, I don't remember what the fuck they want because the plot's all over the place. They bring back this mafia guy and he's like missing a hand, and he puts like a scrambler in his hand, so he's walking around with that, and it's just filled with weird zany characters and bizarre moments and these weird musical numbers, which aren't exactly great musical numbers, but this is such a cult movie, such a weird ass movie, zany characters, aliens, giant butchers, cannibals. Now it's not going to be like, you're like, this sounds amazing, this is going to be a giant gore fest zany. No, it's really cheap, it's really weird. It doesn't necessarily deliver on all the possibilities, but I still think it's worth watching. I think it's fucking bizarre. The little aliens are hilarious because they're just like little robot toys in a spaceship miniatures, and I think I kind of have an affinity for when people do that kind of stuff. Overall, Big Meat Eater is one of the most bizarre films of the year. Is it great? No. Is it a curio that you kind of have to see if you like weird shit? This is Koch Vision that put this out. There is a Blu-ray in Canada only, which I think is like a kind of a made-on-demand disc. I never picked it up, but overall this looks okay. It does have the 5.1 mix, surround sound, it's in full frame, and I think there's no subtitles, but this is by Chris Windsor. It is a weird-ass movie. I think that you just kind of have to see it for yourself. There's some funny dialogue and some funny characters. I like it. I don't love it. I would watch it again. Would pick up a Blu-ray if it got released. All right, guys, for 1982, you guys get your pervert card out. You're going to need it for this. The Girl and the Wooden Horse Torture. Of course, with a title like that, it has to be Nakatsu, right? Nakatsu. That's right. These movies are always, like this hour and like 70-minute, like kind of perverted, weird movies. And in the early 80s, like I said before, there's not a lot of horror going on in Japan. Most of it is the Nakatsu erotic line that bleeds into horror because just the weird torture moments and the weird surreal stuff at times. So this one is pretty dark. The cover art is kind of very striking. You're like, holy shit. But this plot is not... I mean, it's a very kind of weird plot where you explain it and like it's kind of just explaining the whole entire movie. So what we have here is a schoolgirl who is constantly fantasizing about being like raped by her teacher, tied up and raped and whatnot. Like the teacher defends her in her fantasies, and then he ties her up and he molests her, or he molests the people that were causing her harm. She is kind of an outcast. Nobody really likes her. In the very beginning of the movie, these two people are picking on her, these girls picking on her, and the teacher ends up helping her, and she ends up going to like the nurse's office, and what happens is she's bleeding out of her. She's like getting a period or something like that. I feel like I don't necessarily know if it's exactly a period because the way they explain it, they seem like it's not. I don't understand. And then later on there's a sex act, and then she bleeds out. So was her like her first time or not? I know, like, it's just when she asked if it's her period, she doesn't say anything. She doesn't say it is. So it's like I don't understand if you're trying to get at something different or whatnot. But as we progress, the story gets even crazier and whatnot. And there's a time in the film where some girls hold down the teacher and rape him, and they make it look like he took advantage of them, so he loses his job. He ends up a complete outcast, a complete loser in the middle of nowhere, and he ends up going door to door selling dildos with another kind of degenerate guy, selling dildos to women. And there's this really nasty scene where they're selling to this lady, and they decide, well, fuck it, we're gonna rape her. And this schoolgirl comes in and tries to help her, and it creates this big old fight. And the end climax, of course, is going to be those two in this hotel, kind of weird, kind of fetish hotel deal where there's all this, a wooden horse with a dildo. It's there's an enema. Is there a Nakatsu? If it's not a Nakatsu movie unless somebody gets a fucking enema, right? So it gets really nasty, really rapey. Of course, there's a lot of rape. There's a lot of rape fantasy. There's a lot of weird fetish stuff going on. There's, of course, bondage and rope. Again, is it in the Katsu movie if not somebody's not tied up in this bondage and rope thing? So, as far as typical, like it is in that typical vein of them, I think the story's pretty solid though. It's dark. I don't think it ever goes past like good. And I mean, like, I'm rating this on what the Katsu movie is too. Like when you're talking about the sexually explicit kind of dark ones, I'm rating it on that scale. I'm not rating it as like a competing against like, Taxi Driver. But like it is a good movie in terms of Nakatsu. I think the acting is good. I think it's dark and weird and just kind of a bizarre film. It is The Girl and the Wooden Horse Torture. If it sounds like you like these Nakatsu movies, get your pervert card out, go up to the pervert video store or library and rent you up some The Girl and the Wooden Horse Torture. All right, now we're in the Patreon pick here, and this is the Colossus of New York. This is a 1958 cheap sci-fi movie, and I had heard the name before. Obviously, I had the Blu-ray. I know this got released by Kino along with two other movies, and probably a better set here. This doesn't have any features or any subtitles or anything like that. So, the Colossus of New York from 1958. I love my kind of classic sci-fi, especially from the 50s. Low-budget stuff can really do a lot of like ideas and thoughts and everything, and get its message across without having a huge budget here. So we have here is this scientist who is on his verge of getting the Nobel Peace Prize. He's created some great things, amazing kind of work and everything like that. It's a little premature to give him the prize. His father is incredibly proud of him. His father is like a brain surgeon. His brother is also a very intelligent guy. And he's married with a kid. He loves his life. What happens is he runs out on the road to stop, I think he's getting his kid or prevent something, and he gets hit by a bus and he dies. The father cannot live with this, so he takes his brain, his cognitive abilities and whatnot, and puts it in this giant, like, golem juggernaut kind of thing. He's right on the cover. He's fucking enormous. He puts him in there and he's like, listen, we got to get you to finish your things. It's not fair that you're dead. It's not right. And he refuses to let dead go. His dead son go, which is going to be a classic kind of horror sci-fi trope, right? Think Pet Sematary, that idea of grief, that idea of loss causes you to do some really fucked up shit. And that's kind of what we have here. He brings him back to life in this machine, and at first it doesn't really seem to work. He's all out of it. He's not right. And It's really creepy when he talks. He has like these speakers and his eyes glow, and something goes wrong almost right away. I don't know if they're saying his brain got damaged, like the Frankenstein monster in some renditions of it, or that the idea that he's living this awful life now. He used to be a humanitarian. He wanted to save human beings, but now as he's lived this awful life and he's living this life, he wants to destroy the humanitarians because he realizes that he wants to get rid of the bums because they're ruining this world. And it's a complete 180. And you're like, are they saying that by the aspect of, having this horrible life, you might have a horrible outlook on things, or the idea that your brain is damaged so you feel this way? But it gets really crazy. So he went from a humanitarian all the way to the flip side where he wants to kill them, kind of Ultron style, right? When he reads humanity in this aspect and this way he is. And this is probably the reasoning is probably because he can no longer be with his wife or be with his kid, although he maintains contact. At the end of the movie, it gets pretty crazy and wild, and he goes to this big summit and he crosses a chaos, and it ends on a really sad note, as it should, a tragic note. It's a pretty cool movie. I think it's cool. I think it gets kind of its message across. I think that the Gollum, the robot thing, is really fucking cool as well. I think he looks awesome, made on a budget, but the budget shows, but it doesn't ruin any of the message or the story or the entertainment value. That is the Colossus in New York. Good stuff. All right, let's get these questions, comments, and concerns. Ken Coakley, just watched Israel the other night. Your review sparked my interest in Rapture movies are my wheelhouse. The crawl in the beginning says that it takes place many years after the Rapture, but the whole thing shouldn't take long. Between the chosen going to heaven, the 7 years of tribulation, and Jesus returning with a bunch of angels to create his kingdom on earth, it shouldn't take long. I thought the demons were pretty cool. This is supposed to happen earlier in the Rapture. I still stand by the remaining as my favorite Rapture movie. The film is action-packed and pretty violent, although in Azrael, Samara Weaving, Hugo Weaving's niece, wasn't afraid to get dirty. I watched VHS Beyond last month when it debuted on Shudder. I really enjoyed that film franchise because it's always something new. The segment with the skydiving party gets attacked by aliens was my favorite segment. I would like to see them do movies where the segments have something in common, like haunted house segments or satanic rituals gone wrong segments. Very cool. Also watched Inugugami. It was pretty intense. I didn't really like the husband neglected the Miki character, which means it was a great acting performance. I also liked the love interest. He did look kind of like somebody in a boy band with that emo haircut. I didn't like the scene with the chicken being beheaded. I'm an animal lover. I did like the climax being black and white, then back to color. That was pretty cool. Yeah, I never enjoy animal killings, but I'm so desensitized to it watching all these movies. Sometimes it's probably a bad thing I'm desensitized to it. I never enjoy it, but I'm just like, I also watched St. John's Wort. The cinematography was pretty dark, but it added to the atmosphere. I haven't seen 1982, the greatest year in geek history. I like documentaries about movie buffs. I want so badly to get out of this nursing home so I can get back in the game. I also bought my first Blu-ray in 2 years, Trick or Treat, but it's all sold out, which is bumming me out because I want to see the extras and get the soundtrack. Yeah, I mean, it's a cool release. There'll be a standard release, I'm sure. To answer your question, what film won Best Picture of 1982? It was Gandhi. I knew the answer, but in the movie, nobody knows it. I didn't know it before I watched it. I couldn't remember. In the Steven Seagal film Hard to Kill, he mentions going home to watch Oscars to root for Ben Kingsley for Best Actor, Gandhi for Best Picture. Lastly, in your review of Frankie Frico, you said that the term Shabadoo was used for comedy, but you didn't find it funny. In the two Breaking movies, the older dancer was named Shabadoo. I remember telling one of my metalhead friends about a Poison music video where fans crowd Bret Michaels during a guy and showing a guy who looked like Shabadoo for Breaking, and Breaking 2 poked Michaels in the belly button. When I say Shabadoo, he couldn't stop laughing. No, it's not that it's not funny. It's just one of those earworms that makes it funny over time. Movie Junkie reviews 84, nice blood-tide inclusion. I feel like it's underrated. I think it's a little underrated. Ed Rooney, nice new reviews and updates. Thanks. In case you have not heard about it, Creepy Images in Germany has published Thorsten Benzel's book, Giallo Movie Posters Volume 1, 61 to 69. Some facts, 208 pages, full color, paperback edition, and limited hardcover. 240 movie posters for 50 plus Gialli bilingual, English, Germany. Just to avoid any misunderstandings, I have no connection to the publisher or author, but I really like the first or 4 planned volumes. I think it's a great reference book for fans of the subgenre. There are at least 2 reviews of the book on YouTube. Thank you for the info. Angela150, I see your new video and I just click like. I have watched Season of the Witch and it was interesting. Stay well. Thank you. I am whatever I want to. I am whatever I want to be. I'm sure you'll figure out by now the Tenet opens down the front like opening windows inwards, or have you? I have not. I have not messed with it since. Way up, dude. He gives a thumbs up and everything. Thank you. Bad Brains Horror. Frankie Freako looks fun. Haven't checked out Psycho Goreman yet, but love the Astron 6 movies. Thanks for keeping going with the reviews. Thank you. Also, watch Psycho Goreman. It's the best. But yeah, let's get into the update. All right, let's hop into this update. First up was on sale. Talk to Me 4K Blu-ray. Got it for like $12. Heard good things about it. Have not had a chance to watch it, but for that price, I'm willing to give it a shot. Then next up, we had the 50% Criterion sale. Of course, we got Gregg Araki's Teen Apocalypse Trilogy. Totally fucked up. Doom Generation and Nowhere. I never saw Totally Fucked Up. Like Doom Generation, adore Nowhere. And Nowhere has never really had a good United States release after the VHS. So, great film. Then we have Happiness, of course, Todd Solondz. Great movie. Super dark comedy. Absolutely hilarious. Never had a good release past DVD. Fantastic to have it on 4K. Then we have Demon Pawn. This looked interesting. 70s Japanese film. Is it 70s or 60s? But regardless, I think there's kind of a horror aspect to it. But I love these kind of films. So I picked it up on 4K. And then last, but certainly not least, we have a Val Lewton-produced double feature here. I Walked with a Zombie by Jack Tornar and The Seventh Victim by Mark Robson. And this is a movie that my grandfather always talked about. I Walked with a Zombie, and I never watched it. I think the only Val Lewton-produced movie I saw was Cat People so far, and I really like that. So, yeah, I guess we're going to have to watch I Walked with a Zombie soon. So, yeah, that's the update. Let's get out of here. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching, and as always, have a good one.